We shall call this work session to order, and we'll start our business meeting. Appreciate everyone's attendance. We have a few things to discuss, and we have our 2023 Service Awards Program and Employee Appreciation Picnic that starts at 11 to 2, and we're excited about that. So we do need to pay attention to our time, but we do have some important business to attend to. Number one, this morning I'm going to bring up and discuss a recommendation from me in regards to our tax rates. And this data has all been shared. Michelle, thanks to Michelle and her work on putting it in what I feel like an easily understandable spreadsheet. But we're sitting at 6.0 right now, and if we held the rate this year for real estate, if we just held the rate, we'd have a 9.32% increase over this year. There's no way to do that, in my opinion, at this time with the economy. So if you even if you go down to the compensating rate, which has been recommended at 0.0570, you're going to have a 3.86% increase in revenues. If you go to 0.0571, you go over that 4% threshold. So there's really zero, in my opinion, zero room for anything but the compensating rate. Now on personal property, we're sitting at 0.0567. If you held the rate on that, you'd have a 10.95% increase. And if you took the comp rate, you'd have 11.5% increase. So what's being proposed is to stay below that 4% threshold is 0.0531, and that would get us at 3.91% increase in revenues. What questions or comments does anyone have about that? And I would like to bring this to the court next Friday. Mr. Livingston.
Do you happen to know where that places us in the state with regards to tax rate?
I can do some research today.
I mean, it's got to be in one of the lowest five.
The last time I checked, which was like last summer,
yeah,
the data I saw was we were like bottom 5. And, you know, the two issues that are driving this is our new growth, and then the assessments that have been made, the reassessments, and you know, we're blessed, but we're challenged at the same time. And I think, you know, if we had programs that weren't being, you know, funded, if we had issues, but we're blessed with a healthy reserve, and you know, right now we are navigating, you know, with employee compensation well, and we're blessed by our occupational license fee returns that are very, very healthy. So this is what I think. I'm open to any suggestions or comments from you all, and if you have any questions this week, be happy to meet with you, talk with you, but I think it's the appropriate thing to do at this time.
The overall increase in revenue is what amount?
Michelle, you got yours right there. What I'm looking at is this year's revenue was right at $3.3 million. I think we're going to go to 3.6.
Okay, so $300,000.
Yeah. And Michelle double checked me there, but I'm pretty confident that's right. I also met with the Extension Board yesterday, and they voted on rates that would hold below below that 4% threshold, and we'll be sending that to you as well. I believe they'll send that today to Stacy, and Stacy will send it out. But both those rates are below the 4% threshold as well. So, any other questions?
We've always for the motor vehicle and water, it's gonna stay the same, I would
Yeah.
assume.
Yes,
And
sir.
Health board, I believe, is also staying.
Yes, it is.
Stay the same as well.
Yes.
And the library board, we don't know.
Don't have any
They
information.
typically do the 7 o'clock meeting, so we'll
Okay.
have that separate.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions on that, we'll go to our next agenda item, and that's a report of the 2023 Scott County Reapportionment Commission. First and foremost, I'd like to express on behalf of Fiscal Court our appreciation for your all's work. Bernard, Tommy, Isaac is on his way, Rebecca, Amber, Kenna, your all's team, Whitley. Where is Whitley at? Whitley's over there, but
We
you
put
know,
her in the corner.
yeah, Whitley's really the talent, and Whitley, we appreciate your work and expertise on this, and then really there's more work to this than people understand, and I'm going to turn it over now. If there's any comments from any court members before we. Tommy's going to have a presentation, and then I'll ask Rebecca if she has any comments, and then we will open the floor up for conversation and discussion. How's that sound? Tommy, if you'd like to get started.
Sure. I'll just chime in anywhere you want to here as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can we get that PowerPoint going? So, first of all, thank you all for giving us this fun task of redistricting the county. I started out solid brown hair when this started. If it gone any much longer, I was going to look like a judge. So,
Which is pretty good.
get this PowerPoint started here.
I think she's got it on there. Is
No,
that correct?
no,
Or no, they're doing it in there.
This
Okay.
is just a map, so you can see.
Gotcha,
it well.
okay.
If you don't have a copy of the report with you.
Everybody got a copy, and
Okay.
we
Here we go. Okay. So just starting out with the statutes, KRS puts this at every 10 years that we have to go through this process. You all know this, it was delayed 1 year because of COVID. We didn't get the census numbers in on time. Then it was delayed another year because the General Assembly didn't want there to be a situation where somebody won a primary and then found themselves outside of their district going into a general. That was going to cause all kinds of legal chaos. So they punted once again to this year. But KR 67.045 governs the reapportion process. Click, please. Oh, yeah. The wording of that, one more click there. There we go. In counties where the members of the county fiscal court are nominated or elected by districts, such as here, the boundaries of those districts shall be drawn so that the districts are compact, contiguous, and the population of each district shall be as nearly equal as is reasonably possible. Nice vague language there. But those are the three things, the three goals that we statutorily had to consider: are compact, contiguous, and closely equal population. Click, please. So you all know this as well as anybody. Scott County has experienced a remarkable growth rate from 2010 to now. We went from 47,000 and change to 57,000 and change, almost 25% growth in 10 years. Not everybody moves it. It's not evenly distributed by district. So some of your districts are much bigger in population than others. Click, please. There is the chart that shows. It goes from the 5th district, actually lost a little bit of population, all the way to the 3rd, gaining, the 4th is the largest gain at almost 57% more. So that was, that's a challenge. There was no way to basically keep the same district and just tinker here and there, because 56% growth is huge.
Everybody wants to move in Kelly's district.
I was gonna say, we work hard on District 4 to make it.
So to address the legal requirements we have, we'll start with contiguous because that's the easiest one. Contiguous just means that they touch. You can look there, I found a graphic showing the difference of non-contiguous and contiguous. And, you know, in redistricting world, there's always a debate about point contiguity. You know, if two things come together and touch just that point, is that contiguous or not? I didn't want to wade into those waters. I don't think Bernard wanted to wade into those waters. We just make sure that there are no points. Back up just one step here, and I'll explain that the building blocks with districts. You all know that you're at the, you know, the precinct level. Precincts are county creation, so those can be changed at any point. Lines can be changed, and they always are every 10 years. But below that is something called the census block level. And those are not county creations, those are created by the U.S. Census Department. And they are widely varied. Some are thousands of acres. Some, there's one here in town that is literally just right underneath the stoplight at the intersection, and that's it. It's just, you know, a pretty little square. You know, people have asked me, you know, how they come up with the census blocks. I'm pretty sure it's a room full of monkeys and mud that they throw at a wall and see what happens, because there's no rhyme or reason. They're oddly shaped, they're vastly different in size, but the one thing is we cannot change those. So while we use those as the building blocks, we can't alter them at all. Go ahead to the next slide then. Compactness is the next real big thing, the legal requirements we look at. If you look at the graphic there, the first one is where the term gerrymander comes from. It was named after Elbridge Gerry, who created that congressional district for political advantage. Clearly, that's not very compact. If you look over at the one on the right, that is a congressional district, or it was, it got thrown out, but a congressional district in Illinois. That's just about as ugly as it could possibly get. So we did not want to do anything looking like that. We wanted to abide by the compactness and keep things as tight as possible. Next slide, please. Population goals. Now here's where the big thing was with us because of that population growth. So we've got we were trying to get everything approximately the same. And then the way it works, congressional districts have to be equal down to the person unless it's not divisible by 6. If that's the case, you can put, you know, one more in one district or another in another district, whatever, but they have to be down to the person. State legislative districts have a plus or minus 5% variance. The court gave that in the Supreme Court gave that in 1998 in the Fisher case. What was noted in that Fisher case was they were giving that variance for legislative districts to protect county integrity, because they wanted, if a county was not as big as the ideal district for the state house, that's whatever the population is divided by 100. If the county wasn't as big as that number, it wasn't supposed to be divided. So, of course, they recognized that was going to be a challenge, so they gave that plus or minus 5% variance. There is an Attorney General's opinion from 1982 that gives that same plus or minus 5% variance to fiscal courts as well. Now, and I've noted in the report there, personally I believe that that's probably outdated because the Fisher case comes after that and says that the reason that variance is in there for county is for county integrity. Clearly, when you're working just with one county, there's no concern of county integrity. So, personally, I believe that variances probably should be at 0 unless a judge says differently, but nobody has ever taken it to a circuit court level, so a judge has never opined. So, we're good working under the auspices of OAG 82261, which says we have plus or minus 5% on these districts as well.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So on the 5% variance, you're basing that variance on people who have actually, that you all can identify, stay in a home. It's not the potential sites for other homes or subdivisions that can be built out in that area.
We can only work with, you know, clear outset data that can be verifiable. So what the U.S. Census Bureau gave us for 2020, and I mean, we know we've grown since 2020, but we don't know. I mean, we have that feeling, you know, you see something, you know, new houses, new subdivisions going up, but it's not quantifiable. So what we do, we take the US Census data from 2020, take it for the county, divide it by 7, that's the ideal number for each magisterial district. And by all means, please interrupt me if you have questions, you know, but click please. That is, 8165 is the ideal number for every district in the county then. And like I said, all we did is take that population, divide by 7, that gives us the ideal. So we can go plus or minus 5% of that 8165. Click please. Non-statutory goals, because there's a lot of case law dealing with redistricting and everything. And for those of you who don't know, I've lived this for quite a while. I work with redistricting on the state legislative level. So I read, sadly, I read case law dealing with redistricting a lot. But the ones that really could apply to Scott County are communities of interest. There's no set real definition of communities of interest, but judges have said that you need to take it into consideration. It's really, it's people who might have similar wants and needs, is how they express it. In a lot of places, that's minorities, and you're required, like on the state legislative level and congressional level, if you can make a district that has a majority of minorities, you're required to do that. That's not an issue to look at in Scott County. I forgot what our minority number is, but it's nowhere near large enough to be in its own district. So that wasn't a concern. But communities of interest can also be historic communities or incorporated communities. You know, in Scott County, we've got Sadieville and Sandy Ground that are incorporated. So we didn't want to split those. We want to keep those whole. Georgetown, of course, way too big to be just one magisterial district, so it was fine to split that. But then we also want to look at the historic communities that are not incorporated, places like Zion Hill or Oxford or Minersville or Skinnersburg or Scullbus or wherever. You know, those are, people have an identity with those places. So we wanted to try to keep those together as much as possible. And then we have so many subdivisions in Scott County that they've almost taken the place of those historic communities. You know, people may say, I live in Canewood just as much as they do, I live in Minersville, or I live in Victoria as much as they do Skinnersburg, or whatever. So we want to look at those subdivisions as well, because it's essentially taking the place of those communities. And then we want to use distinctive boundaries. Like I said, those census blocks are what we have to use to put together. Some of those, once again, they make no sense on what their lines are. They may just cross a field. We found one it's a power line, and that gets difficult to explain to people. And you all know right now your districts are a little bit, you know, hodgepodge anyway. Sometimes, you know, somebody says, "Do I live in your district?" And it'll be a road that's divided somewhere, and you're like, "I'm not sure," because the lines aren't as distinct as they could be. So what we want to do were to make those distinct lines as much as possible. One we use is the bypass. And if you're on the south side of the bypass, you would be in District 3. If you're in the north side of the bypass, it might be 7 or 5. You know, and that way it's much easier to understand. You know, if somebody comes to you and says, I live south of the bypass, you say, oh, that's District 3. It's not a problem. Same way with US 25, 460. We want to use those main arteries as dividing lines. Click, please. So here's the full county proposal. You've probably got a better picture with your report that you can see. But all the districts are contiguous. The compactness of each one improves. Now, there are different measures of compactness. There's probably 15 different ones. The two most widely accepted are REOC and Holsby-Popper. There are mathematical formulas that are way beyond this history major's comprehension, but I have a tool that can measure them. And so I did that, and all of them improved. All the districts fall within that plus or minus 5% population variance. The communities and major subdivisions are kept whole just as much as possible. there's probably some smaller ones that might have been split, like subdivision lines, but none that pop out to mind right away. The major highways and waterways, we did use Elkhorn Creek as a dividing line in some places, are used as district boundaries as much as possible for the simplicity of being able to tell people where they live. And then there was an issue where Scott County is divided into two state representative districts. And Rebecca can probably talk about this better, but there are forced precincts because of where those lines are compared to the magisterial lines. So we tried to eliminate as many of those as possible. One you'll notice in District 5, there's a spot it juts up that looks a little weird. That's why that juts up, is to make sure that that forced precinct wasn't there. And the good thing is, with voting centers, the precincts won't matter as much around the county, but in these situations, it got down to where I think there was one, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one that was going to be like 31 people in a forced precinct. 31 people, now, some of those may be kids or whatever. Now we're saying maybe 20 registered voters, so 50% turnout, that's 10. Then let's say it's a primary and it's divided out. You might have a situation of 3 or 4 people voting. Suddenly, you can reasonably guess how somebody voted. And that, we didn't want that situation to happen. So we tried to make sure that where there were forced precincts, there was a significant number of people in them. Click, please. All right, so just to run through each, I don't know what the whole record is there. Okay, run through each district here. District 1, for the most part, that is using US 25 as a dividing line, and then US 62 on the Cynthiana Road side. That is the only district to have one small stretch that doesn't use a road or a waterway as a boundary. You remember when I was talking about these ungodly big census blocks? Right here, this one is one of those. Ricky, it also happens to be the census block you live in. So we could have made it look a lot better and shifted that one into District 2, but we didn't really want to put incumbents together. It's not a legal requirement, but it wasn't anything we really wanted to do. I feel it wasn't anything you all really wanted us to do either. So that's why that one little jut is there on the far left, because it is a huge census block. So there's one area there that it actually does use the power line. It is the dividing line. It goes through the back of a farm.
Tommy, I got a question. It might be a Rebecca question or Amber. The constables, are the constables elected by magisterial districts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Now, for population's sake, District 1 did have to dip into town just a little bit to pick up some population. Originally, I tried to do that all just in the northern part of the county, because that part of the county has not grown very much and the rest has. If I'd done that, it would have literally had to go into Stanton-Graham and divided Stanton-Graham then. One, which I know we probably didn't want to do, and 2, it would have, would greatly negatively affected the Stanton-Graham area, I think, to have been divided. So the alternative was to come into Georgetown just a little bit, picks up the Rocky Creek, and there's that other subdivision right next to it that I always forget the name of. So it picks up that's what that weird little jut is. Whitley, can you zoom in on yours?
That right there.
Yes, that picks up that. And once again, there's this little, what we call the flag. That is an entire census block. So there was no way, nobody lives here. It's this weird part of the census block that I'd love to get rid of, but it's the monkeys in the room fault. So it picks up this area, that's the population that allows to get up to that, within that 5% variance. Click, please.
Are there any questions about any of that, or?
Yeah, so,
Let's go back to 1, I'm sorry.
that used to include, and maybe it still does, but I don't think it does if I'm reading this right, the pavilion area?
Pavilion is
Off of Champion Way.
Champion Way, which is right here, very close to Dwayne's house. So we kept both sides of that in there, in with his. You come down, you get the Toyota and come down. I believe is this I-75 right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we made that a dividing line, come down through the Toyota property and then pick up that.
Well,
You used to be on the other side of Champion Way, I have one side, right?
Yeah.
That's how it used to be.
right, they used to have used to be,
Had been a divider before,
Yeah.
we made it I-75.
used to be the pavilion, and then right across from Ann Mason and that little subdivision right there. So, since we're talking about
Yeah.
District 1, you made a comment about similar wants and needs is what you're trying to address.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about District 1, when you look at that northern point of all the way up to the Grant County line, first of all, it's about 19 and a half miles from there to the Ann Mason stoplight, which is the bottom of the district now.
Yeah.
And then you add another 4.5 miles to make it around to Rocky Creek on the bottom side. And I didn't even drive to try to get to the eastern side on 62. But going back to the similar wants and needs, the calls that I receive almost year round, but especially in the winter and stormy, which we've had a lot of, is that whole US 25 north, west and east side.
Yeah.
Because those people have similar wants and needs. It's always about the same roads. The state roads in that area don't get the attention usually that they need, like Stone Lane, Frogtown, Burton Pike, Biddle Pike. So I get those calls about how come our roads haven't been plowed. And the first thing most people want to do is blame it on the county, which
Of course.
that's
That's why they're calling you.
that's never, almost never the case, and which is a good word for our county road department. But so to me, of course, I don't know the numbers, but taking that pavilion out and then extending it all the way down to Rocky Creek, and those folks on that end of the county, no slight towards those folks, but they don't have the same common needs that most of the magistrates that operate out in the county, like District 2, District 3, District 4, we get the calls on the roads that are in that area.
Right.
And that's, so, I'll just tell you right up front, I'm not in favor of this, so.
So the challenge for us, and I'm not saying it's a problem, it was a challenge, is that this area has very little population, and is compared to the rest of the county. So what happened, I think I mentioned, I tried to come down here and draw just this area as its own district. To do that, I was gonna have to literally divide Stanton ground and come all the way down here. And like I said, the community integrity was the number one thing I wanted to look at. I don't think Stanton ground wanted to be divided into two districts. So that's where had to dip down to get a little bit more population. The good news on that situation is with that part being in town, you probably won't get the calls on the road cleaning, they'll go to the city. But this area, we entertained two different possibilities. We entertained either making US 25 the dividing line or I-75 the dividing line. And we tried both, but to be honest, it doesn't make much difference. The space between 75 and 25 through there was very few people living there. I think it might have, correct me if I'm wrong, it was something like 100, 150 people. So it really didn't make any difference on that. So that's why we come up through here. And then, like I said, use Cynthiana Road as the other dividing line until you get right there just to the Rocky Creek section. So Rocky Creek, it's right there touching this area. Whitley, you want to zoom in on that? I can't tell what that is right there. This is Cherry Blossom Way. There's Lexus Way. So come down there, and then right there at here's Paris Road. So that part touched, it was a subdivision that we could insert a whole subdivision and make the numbers work.
So District 4, the growth in District 4,
Is phenomenal.
you had to pull from 4.
Right.
Is that right, Bernard and Isaac? I mean, that's the 4 is, it's Kelly's fault.
Yeah, I'm sure you love each and every person in your district, but you had to lose a bunch of them.
I did.
So
And
were there any other maps in? I think somebody's brought some stuff in, but,
I mean, we worked through hundreds of scenarios and possibilities.
I was just wondering what the number difference is between the pavilion and the Rocky Creek area.
So the pavilion is this area that was gonna be that forced precinct, and that's why that jut is there, is to make, because I think in this area, it was under 100 people there, but down here it was a little more. So to put that, to make sure that we didn't have that forced precinct problem, we had to move this area into 5. Because if you see the black and white line there, that is the state representative district. So this area all is 62, this area is 88. Typically, what happens is this process is done before the state legislative redistricting. So what happens is the county board of elections just has to kind of go and do, they do their part and then it may get affected. We have the one precinct, is it Old Depot or Old Mill? Old Depot, that's got 5 registered voters in it. That was created because of that situation, 10 years ago. This way, by trying to avoid those forced precincts, we should avoid that situation where we have so few voters in an area. Any other questions about 1? All right, click please. District 2. Looking at, so that is it's got all of the city of Stamping Ground in it then, and then we use that west side of 25 and the north side of 460 as your main borders. It comes in down here around the bypass as well, but it's, for the most part, it's pretty distinct borders. The one area that would be kind of iffy, I would say, is the same thing we were talking about. That's the dividing line between 1 and 2, where it's that power line for that one area in the back of a farm. But once again, that was because where incumbents live. But it's pretty well defined, I think. That way, I know beforehand, 460, some was on one side, some was on the other. This way, anything north of 460 would be in District 2, anything south of 460 would be in 3. Any questions on 2?
Hey, JR, is that Eagle Spring or Eagle Creek Drive that's?
Eagle Spring to just north of Sagerville and 32 and Eagle
And
Creek.
just north of Pokeberry. I just wondered if that's in District 2 now, Eagle.
Yeah, anything west of 25 would be in 2. So, like the Porter area, all of that would be in 2.
Yeah. So that Eagle, that particular drive we're talking, it's a dead end street that only comes out on 25 and it's.
Oh, look at this, you can search streets. Eagle Spring, is that right?
It's Eagle Spring or Eagle Creek Drive. Eagle Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's 25.
Right. Yeah, so that's a dead end. It only comes out on 25. It goes back to my point about the similar wants and needs. And
So,
those folks
what
don't-
it is, anybody that lives on 25, if they're on the west side of it, they'll be in 2. If they're on the east side of it, they'll
Right.
be in
I get it.
1. It may be next door, well, not next door, but across the road neighbors, but that's gonna happen wherever you draw a line. Yeah, so you gotta draw it somewhere. We can click on through to 3. District 3 may be the easiest one to explain. That is the southern part. So you've got 460 is your major dividing line there, coming around the bypass all the way up here to,
East Main Street extended.
yes, and then comes down 75 and Lyle Road. That's,
The only question I have, and I think I know the answer, is the reason why on the east side of Lyle Road, right where it says 88?
Yes.
That belongs to Cheryl Stevenson's
Yes.
district. That's why that's now in Kelly's district, correct?
correct.
Okay.
And the one thing you'll notice, right here on Lyle Road, that neighborhood out there, that gets divided. We tried every way in the world not to divide that one. It bumps the population wrong. The only corrections we could find in keeping the integrity of McClellan and East Main and 460, the only solution that there was one that was incredibly ugly. So we figured it might be better just to go ahead and keep that split right there. And there's significant enough population in both sides of that it won't be a problem of figuring out how to people that.
Right.
So, any questions on 3?
What neighborhood is that at the bottom you're saying?
It's the trailer park.
Okay.
I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
But,
Honda Road.
Honda Road.
yeah. So, when you're driving out Lyle, there's some on the right.
Right.
And the thing is,
It's called Georgetown Mobile Estate.
Georgetown Mobile Estate, this part actually goes on deeper into Fayette County. So, I mean, we can't do anything about that either.
Yeah, right.
But that small triangle is outside of the 88th.
This is in the 62nd.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So,
that-
okay, I thought that was.
The
okay.
black and white line are the state representative dividers.
So, looking at that population, would it be easier to just, I know you all said you all kind of went down that path. You couldn't include it in 3 and then take away north of Lemons Mill Road? I mean, would that not, it wouldn't work out that way?
We tried it.
Okay.
Well, we probably spent more time on that area than anything else in the map, trying all kinds of different scenarios.
Okay.
We tried flipping this to 4, we tried flipping, and switching that out, and everything, it just, the population.
Could you
won't be.
flip
highly
that,
dense.
that little triangle?
Yeah.
Could you flip it to 3 and then go north of 62 just a little bit in 4 to gain? Or give a little bit of that to 4? I know y'all tried so many different scenarios.
Yeah.
But,
If we come in here, it's probably feasible, but then you're dividing a neighborhood.
yeah, I know you didn't want to do it. I just,
Sorry. If we come into
I was just talking about going
Payne's
on the,
Landing or Payne's Crossing
Yeah.
or.
and I know that if you're looking at 4, Whitley, if you could shrink just a little bit, on the high side, on the north side of 4, you use 62.
Right.
But the same thing happens there again is because the 88th district, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't want
That's the dividing line.
So like, if you cut down there, then you're doing the same thing up there if you change that outside that line. Is that what you all were looking at?
And I apologize, I intentionally created the problem when I drew that house district. So,
Let's get ready to
One
ask
other
you who did
question,
that.
Tommy. The black and white line is the district, the representative line.
Yes.
So north of that, right now, that's Cheryl Stevenson's district, 88, and then to the left is Philip Pratt.
Right.
That's right.
anything inside this black and white is 88, the rest of the county is 62.
Okay.
So how does that force precinct work? So, I'm
Amber,
looking,
I'll let you explain that.
Force precinct, it's because of the state lines.
Mhm.
It captures an area that's in between the two state rep districts, so we are forced to create a precinct out of it. You can't have two state rep districts in the same precinct. So what happens is, in the same magisterial district, there will be a group of voters who are voting for one representative and another group of voters who will vote for the other representative. But they will have the same magistrate. So that leads to voter confusion for one thing, because you're logically
All right, District 4. So what that does, that's kind of the southeastern portion of the county, and some of this is getting redundant because where it's the lines of other districts, but it's Cynthiana Road is most of it, Cherry Blossom Way, a little bit around Rocky Creek then, and then down I-75 and Law Road. So it's everything kind of east of that.
And then previously, the 88th didn't exist.
Right.
And that's why that boundary's set now on that 62.
Right.
Where
Remember, previously, we had 3 representative districts in Scott County that, once again, I think it was a room full of monkeys, because you could be at Broussard's and be in one district, courthouse in one district, and spots and be in a third. It was bizarre how those lines were drawn. But these lines, the 88th, those are the current precinct lines. So even when it looks a little funky, that's because that's what the current precincts are. No precincts were divided in the statewide map. But, so that's.
That didn't exist the last time these were
Right.
drawn, so.
Right. District 4, any questions about that?
And that's,
Right.
and that's another reason you had to move everything, or you wanted to move 4 down below 62.
Right. Click, please. District 5, this is the one, it started out much more compact. Actually, it was the most compact until we found out about this 4th precinct issue that we changed a little bit. This area and this area are due to the 4th precinct. So that's why it looks a little wonky. But for the most part, this is essentially North Georgetown. You've got I-75, you've got McClellan, then comes up US 25, this part, and so then Main Street coming up 25 there. Then we use the creek. It picks up the Colony, the whole subdivision there. Trying to remember. It's got that whole area then off Champion Way, both sides of the subdivisions would pick up the pavilion then. This area, quickly, can you zoom in on that little part down here? There is very little population there. That is the East Campus and the industrial areas there. So it didn't really affect the population a lot, moving it into the 5th. What it did was take care of the 4th precinct issue.
But that District 5 is in two different. It
is, but it's significant enough population that it's not the biggest concern.
But you can't have it in 2.
Had this been by itself, best I remember, that's the one that was like 31 people. Yeah, and so by putting it in with this, now you can draw the precinct. I mean, literally, you could draw a precinct all the way up here if you wanted to, and you don't have to worry about those small populations.
I mean, there's a bunch of factories there. There's
Yeah, that is
East
31
Campus.
people.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming 29 of those are probably people that live at East Campus and registered, or county that. Because. Let's say 29, I figured Sam,
Doesn't that get to you like the 31 though, would you effectively be able to figure out how somebody voted though?
Yeah, so that's why we did this. Beforehand, we didn't have it in the 5th, but it was gonna be that 4th precinct. By putting it in the 5th, now that 31 could be put in with people that live all the way up here or here, however you wanna draw that precinct.
It was in the 7th.
Yeah, the Board of Elections will draw that after.
I think it was at Southern Elementary is where they voted, so you would go over there and there would be like 4 votes. 5
Yeah.
votes.
Yeah.
Tape, when it would be taped up on the window.
But won't that also get to what y'all talked about too, because it splits house districts right down the middle, so you could effectively then have somebody.
Goes all the way up.
So it goes all the way.
Right. You could have-
So there's so much population, you wouldn't be able to figure it out. It's significant population on the east side and the west side. It's not a concern there. It's just when it gets down to
It
the
doesn't
small
at all.
pockets of population, that is really.
So the main thing for me is that they got the colony as far as population.
You would, that was a big population, and remember,
Chad, Kelly,
yeah, remember yours was the district that was actually too small.
they're all impacted.
And so
Or thing.
you needed to pick up quite a bit of population. The Colony kind of provided that, and then,
It's also across the street from Main Street, so I had that. And I
Correct.
watched that, yeah.
correct, we use Main Street there as a divider because, once again, everybody knows where Main Street is. It's easy to say you live north or south of Main. And the same way with Broadway. It runs up Broadway until you get to the creek. Well, not six, but either way, Broadway and the creek make that intersection, so it's easy to explain where people live and what district they be in. Okay, questions on that? Click, please. District 6, kind of the central part of Georgetown. So the creek is most of the northern border. McClellan down here to Paynes Depot. It cuts across here. This is Hiawatha, and then I can't remember what that road is. It's what divides those subdivisions.
No.
Seminole.
Wellington, that's Wellington.
Is that Wellington?
Yeah.
No, I thought this is Wellington.
That's Wellington.
That's-
Roxy,
That's what it is. This is not a road. That's what divides the two subdivisions there. It's that space between. And then down here, 25, and then Old Lemons Mill over to is that McClellan again, and then to East Main and Broadway. So it's got the, Ward Hall Estates, Canewood.
it's a train track.
Yes, that's right. So you got Ward Hall and McClellan, Canewood, Paynes Landing, everything that's named after Native Americans that I never can figure out which is Indian Hills and Indian Acres. Picks up Quail Run. It's got the south side of Maine, so it's got the college and then the neighborhoods behind the college.
Questions about that? Any questions on that one?
All right. District 7 is everything that's left. District 7, running down McClellan as your southern border the whole way, comes up, did we determine that was the railroad? Is that
Yes.
what that was? Okay, which is where that dividing line is between the two house districts. Come across Old Lemons Mill, down Broadway a little bit, up Hiawatha, that little jut there, and then the dividing line between the neighborhoods, and then down Paynes Depot a little bit there. Any questions on that one? Click, please. So, the conclusion is that, yes, all the districts meet the statutory requirements of the contiguity, compactness, and then the population variance of plus or minus 5%. All districts preserve the communities of interest as much as possible. I think you saw, we went to great lengths to not split neighborhoods. We kind of went in the pecking order. First thing we didn't want to do was split Stanton Graham or Sadeville. After that, those historic communities and then subdivisions. And then all districts utilize major roadways or waterways, because you saw the one place we use at Elkhorn, to provide sensible borders that are very easy to explain to the public. So, Isaac, Bernard, if y'all have anything you want to say about it, that's our proposal.
Bernard?
I would just like to say to the court, thank you for this opportunity to serve on this commission. As one of the commissioners, I've learned so much about redistricting. And I would say to the citizens of Scott County that, with these censuses coming out, please fill them out. Because your interest is so important. Your numbers are so important to be counted. That provides more federal income coming into our county. We get more things. So I would encourage people, and I would encourage the court, our registered officials, when it's time for these census to come out, there were some communities that had events that gave out things to people that filled out these census. So that is very important. I've learned so much doing this, and I want to thank the judge, court members, the clerk, your staff, working with these fine gentlemen was just an invaluable experience. And this lady here with me, when I was working in Georgetown, and watch the growth. I hope sheriff, police chief, water company, fire chiefs, use this lady. She can make our job so much easier. Search warrants, you know, different, that I was thinking about. Would be so much easier to draw using her expertise. But I'd like to say thank you again for allowing me to serve this community. And if I could ever be of assistance to any of us, please don't hesitate to call.
Thank you so much. Isaac?
Oh, likewise, pretty much saying the same thing he said. I want to thank you all for choosing me. And I'm going to tell you, I work in 4 jurisdictions. You all's clerk system, I work with them in elections, and I work with WIC in the past. I brag about her constantly.
Yeah.
Because what you all have here, the way you use technology, it's like some counties still don't move out of the 80s little things. And shit, we bump heads and heads, but we still put the same body of Scott County. And I like that in you and you all. So keep up the good work and I'm glad to
Thank you.
I will add that,
Tommy?
when I thought I knew the county pretty well. I've been on most every road in the county. I realized I can't hold a candle to Bernard. He would say, it wouldn't be, I wonder how many people live out there. He's like, well, so-and-so, and he started rattling off who lived there. And how many of the people, how many kids they had. And that's how he knows that the census was wrong, because I know there are more people than that in that house. So it was a great asset to have him knowing every one of these communities, every road that went through there, kind of what the dividing line is. It's very easy with Georgetown, Stamping Ground, Sadieville to look at the borders that there are. It gets questionable when you get to these other, where's Newtown start? Where's Newtown end? And Bernard would chime in, he's like, well, that's more Porter than it is Sadieville there. So that was handy.
Very good. Well, thank you all very much. And then it sounds like we need to call Joe Kane and tell him he needs to pay Whitley more. So we'll do that. But I'd like to ask for any comments from Rebecca or her staff, Amber, Kenna. So if you'd like to give any comments.
Thank you, I would. And as Tom said to the other members of the commission, jump in anytime. Left something out or being confusing. So you might wonder, why is the county clerk on this commission? Why is statute written that way when the county clerk is a non-voting member? And I think we've already touched on that as some of the issues that have come up. It's because in drawing these lines, lawmakers were aware the county clerk could bring in that perspective of how will these lines affect elections moving forward. So in that, we had a lot of vivid discussion about these issues. Most of them have already been identified. I feel like the members of the court have been astute and already identifying some issues that I would like to bring to your attention. So, in due diligence, I think that's where I would like to, I might look to my, members of my election coordinator and Kenna, who's been very involved as chief deputy, to bring out some of that perspective about how these lines for this potential map, if adopted, will affect elections moving forward. So the first thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
And I mentioned this yesterday. Before we get into a deep discussion on a new map, because we've already seen the other map and been able to digest it, I would prefer to have the new map to be able to digest and ask questions independently, as opposed to spend the next 2.5 hours asking questions and then coming back later with even more questions because we haven't seen the map.
Okay, you referred to it. You're referring to a new map.
Yes.
So let me explain about this. The
Or
discussion.
talking about what the issues are, because I know after the issues, we're going to have a conversation about something else, so.
Your issue is any alternate drafts.
If there are any alternate drafts, which I think this is where this is going, I would like to have an alternate draft before we start a discussion on an alternate
Okay.
Exactly. The reason he talks about a new map is because when when the voting members of the commission had identified lines that they were in favor of and were prepared to move forward with that map, as I said, from my perspective as county clerk, and obviously Amber was well involved in this, we pointed out some concerns that we had from an election standpoint. So in doing that, we not only pointed out those issues, but we felt like again, in due diligence, why just point out the issue? Could we work with our resources, with Whitley, as well, and try to provide a solution for those issues? So when David's talking about a new map, what he means is not only did we voice those concerns, but after voicing those concerns, we went back to the drawing board as well. And not even back to the drawing board. We had brought in actually an example map of a way it could be done. That was, legal per KRS. It had all districts within the ±5 deviation of population. It satisfied all the requirements. So we brought in an example map because as we began to come forward with the commission and be able to convey to the commission our perspective on how this was done, because Amber and I worked on this about 12 years ago. We worked on a reapportionment plan with a reapportionment commission. So we wanted to bring our experience to that. In doing that, not only did we convey some of our concepts that would be coming into working with this commission, we actually initially just sat down with Whitley and we drew out a potential map. We didn't know how hard it would be, but we had an example map. We did bring that to the commission. The commission had a different map that they worked with, which was absolutely fine. Their map, the map that the commission has approved and brought to the fiscal court, it satisfies all those requirements of KRS as well. But with that map that has been approved by the commission, I still had some concerns from a county clerk perspective. So I worked with Amber and with Whitley to not only project those concerns, but to try to provide a solution. And in doing that, we worked with them at that point. We set aside that example map that we brought in the beginning. We worked directly off of the map that the commission was using, that the commission had approved at that time, and we moved those lines to solve those issues and those concerns. And then brought that map to the commission and said, we'd like you to consider an alternate. And in doing that, the commission did make a couple of adjustments to that map that had been approved and move forward with that map. And that's what you've seen today has been projected to you in the report. So now I would say there's another map. It's the map that I brought forward to the commission to say, this is how I would suggest to solve the concerns that I have. So do you want me to just kind of touch quickly on those concerns? I'll do that. And then actually that map, if you're interested in seeing it, we have it here. And Whitley could probably bring it up on the screen as well. And you can consider those solutions and you can compare and contrast it to the map that's been put in the report the commission has approved.
But just to confirm, the commission took input from you and your staff, made some adjustments to the approved draft prior to that being presented to the court.
That is correct.
Okay.
Which I very much appreciate, that the commission had approved a map, and heard my concerns, but when I brought forward solutions, they heard what I had to say, gave me full opportunity to address those concerns with my solutions and incorporated changes in that map. And so they approved an amended map. And I think that was, a very diligent step to take to go ahead and make those considerations and do that. Now, there were a couple of changes. I would suggest that I still have some concerns. And again, it's only in due diligence that I'm bringing that before the fiscal court, because this is where we need to have this conversation. There is no perfect map, by the way. I couldn't agree more with Tommy on that. There is no perfect solution. What I'm going to offer to you will have some communities divided will have some forest precincts. It will have some shapes that I don't particularly like, which were more compact. But I do feel like it solves the concerns. So,
But going back to David's request is, you know, I think he wants to see what you're, you know, presenting prior to having discussion, so you can have an informed discussion. So.
That's up to the court, though. I'm just voicing my opinion, and that's totally up to the court on whether you want to
I'd like to,
discuss something that hasn't been viewed.
I don't necessarily discuss it, but I'd like to hear the concern, so when I look at this alternate map, I know what I'm looking at, like, I agree with that. I don't know why I'm looking at it, you know.
Okay. we can
So,
do that.
so what I would say is, you know, our commission has done their statutory obligation. They have done their due diligence. They have done what they've been required. Is that correct,
I
Cam?
agree. Their work is done, and they've submitted this report to you.
They've submitted this draft. Now, it is up to this body to determine what direction they want to go forward with what's been submitted by the commission, and if there's questions, comments, or possible edits, amendments to a draft, then that's this body's decision.
That's correct. But under the statute, you have 60 days from when they turn in the report to either adopt it or to amend it. And the day they turned it in, correct me if I'm wrong, was July 20th. So by my calculation, the 60-day deadline would be Monday, September 18th, or really you'd probably want to do it the Friday before. So you have some time, but that's your window.
So we have that window.
Yeah.
So what I'd ask you, Rebecca, is if you could briefly kind of go over the highlights of what you have concerns about, because you're elected official, constitutional officer, and have value in sharing that for the court to consider. But I really think our time would be best served is you sharing that and then giving the court the opportunity to look at what's being presented as concerns, and then come back and have another conversation. But I just wanted to emphasize that the commission has done their obligation and done it by following those guidelines, and they've done exactly what they've been asked to do, and we appreciate that. But I'm sure all across Kentucky, 120 counties, that there's much debate and much discussion about what drafts are presented and what ends up being approved. So if you keep that in mind, and then we'll go forward from there.
If I might suggest, just for efficiency, why don't I point out, because Whitley, you can probably just switch back and forth. Do you have that map available? Yeah.
So
Okay,
this is the alternate map.
Well, so if I could first look at, if I could point out the issue, then we'll go to the alternate, and I'll suggest the solution, like one by one. Then you can kind of, in the meantime, you're kind of digesting the whole of the alternate map.
Can I real quick, because
Yes.
I like the process you're talking about doing, but what I would like to see, maybe in a future meeting, is the solution on the the problem on the PowerPoint with the solution laid out, as opposed to just discussion, because we can discuss all day, and there's a bunch of old people up here, and we will forget when we walk out the door possibly, but if I have it in hand.
Bernard.
I didn't say you were old, I just said old
Yeah.
people up here.
Mr. Palmer.
We did put the two maps side by side, and like I don't know if we can do that now. If you would like to look at them side by side, unless you put them on the screen. And we did work through some of the issues. So, if she can put that map, I think she can. But
I don't know that we can actually see it well enough to, but I mean, I'd like to have, what is the problem and what is the solution? And it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint, it can be a Word document.
She can do it all, man.
You'll be able to see that.
I can't.
Okay.
You want to pull it forward more? Screen.
Oh, yeah. Tommy, can you help pull that cart forward?
For the old.
No, I do. Yeah.
David, would you like it right in front of your eyes?
Just right over there.
You're bifocal. He needs his readers.
And like,
I'm trying to hold out as long as possible.
like everybody's welcome to move forward, like Bernard, Isaac, and Tommy, whatever y'all, or JR and everybody over here, if y'all want to move forward to see what's being said.
Apparently, there's some old people up here, so I've been told.
So the right version is the final draft from the
I'm
commission.
gonna go sit right out there.
The left version is an alternate, that addresses some concerns that,
Do you also have like these like listed out that you can also email us, like your concerns?
I can certainly do that, yes. Because some of this conversation has come up, we do have those maps printed or over here, you can do those, at your leisure, but we can also provide them and send you whatever you like. Okay, so what I'm gonna start with, my major concern, as you said, would be the forest precincts. Because when it comes down to an election, these lead to things like voter confusion, first of all, but voter privacy, could be a major issue. And, Tom spoke on that very well because you have a very small number of registered voters, you don't have a high turnout, you could potentially have an issue with, not having a privacy ballot. So I would point you to what you've already discussed, Georgetown Mobile Estates. There would be
way down there on the bottom.
There would be a population of 268, but only 121 voters. So that's an uncomfortable level for me. Now, in the issue where there were 31 registered voters, that's something that the commission addressed based on bringing my concerns. But I'm still very concerned about this forest precinct with 121 registered voters. But a further issue is what we've talked about having the same community vote together. So that is literally dividing in half a community. And so we've got the common needs issue, and we've got the low number of registered voters. So I'll just move on because you can see that has been addressed. What you're going to see in a side-by-side comparison, you're going to see 5 forest precincts in the commission's map. You're going to see only 3 forest precincts in what I would call the county clerk's solution map.
Thank you.
No,
I apologize. I do think Tommy did it good. I think he's helped me understand the force precinct is a brand new term. But when you call it a force precinct, I guess my question is, I see the boundary lines between the state reps districts. So I see several, like in the commission's map, it looks to me like in District 1, there are some of the voters will be voting in the 88th. So most of them will be voting, I think, in 62nd, right?
This is
But then I'm looking at District 4, there's still going to be some 88 voters and some 62nd voters, and I think the same thing's going to happen in 1 or 2 of the city precincts, right? Or am I? So, but those are not considered forced precincts because of why?
The concern is the number of population.
I got you.
So like in the 5th district, it would be divided between the 88th and the 62nd.
So that's where you
But there's
were
probably 4,000 in the 88th and 4,000 in the 62nd. So it's not really a big concern there. When it got down under 31, that's where.
Or even at 100 count.
But, in conversations, Rebecca, with the commission, you're there at those meetings, there's always give and take, and there's always, and you said they had feedback from, they took feedback and made, how many changes did you present to the commission prior to them voting on it?
There were a number of discussions. A lot of what we did, Whitley would work with us just to move on. So we would grab an area of population.
Well,
So
but-
she
but-
populated it, we would
Yeah.
grab that, we would look at what that did to,
But-
and we could,
but-
the whole time we would see where that would fluctuate. in
What are the
percentage.
concerns?
Well, but what I'm saying is, like you all talked, and they made a couple of changes, it sounded like, prior to, you know, did you at that time say, hey, I'm good with it, we can move forward?
Are you
I'm asking, like, how did we get here? Like,
Because there were about 5 major concerns that I had, within one of those concerns, 2 force precincts were corrected. So I still had issues remaining, however, I'm a non-voting member. So I'm only here in due diligence, talking to this board about some concerns that I still have.
Can I ask a question? So like this right here that we're looking at with this district 4 and 5, I think. What does it fix and how does it fix? Maybe I don't understand. I see
You're
giving
saying
more.
we fix that, right? This one right here?
No.
District 5, this issue right here?
No,
What's
no.
the back?
I thought-
no, down at the bottom, the splitting of Georgetown Estates.
So what happens here, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Amber, in this, I believe it's the opposite of what I described before, where in the same community, this House of Representatives line would have been voting for the same magistrate but a different representative. Here, it's the opposite scenario, where these individuals are going to all be in the 62nd as far as their state representative, but half of them are going to be voting for,
Cheryl Lynn.
District.
No, for District 4, then it would be District 3.
Magistrate. So yes, half of that very same community, Georgetown Local State, half will be voting for one magistrate, half will be voting for the other magistrate, but they're all in the same representative district. So that's 2 different ballots. So those individuals in that same community will have 2 different, the ballots will look different, but more importantly, they'll be served by 2 different magistrates. That becomes confusing. Your neighbor who lives in your same community has a different magistrate. So that comes to, common needs, but in this, the most serious condition here is, this little pocket right here is only 121 voters. So that comes down to voter privacy. We have a very few voters show up in a low turnout primary, and suddenly, we're concerned about the voter having privacy with their ballot.
So you're one of the, you incorporate that into the 4th district.
So it's, yeah.
And then, and then,
The one on the left is the proposed.
and then,
The one right back
The one on the right
Yeah.
is the one above.
and Tommy, you had a comment.
So, just to back up a little bit, what you were asking about the process. So, and Bernard, I can jump in here if I'm saying this wrong. But the commission, we did approve a map, and then we came back for our next meeting to kind of work out the language of the report and everything. And that's when Rebecca brought 5 concerns to us. 3 of those concerns we saw as very valid. We were able to correct 2 of them, no problem. 2 of them we considered, we didn't see them as overwhelming concerns, so we went forward. The one that we were not able to correct, that we did see as a little bit of a concern, was this issue. Now she's presented that she's corrected it here, but the problem is, like you said, it's a balancing act, and things send ripples everywhere. The solution of putting that together, now if you come see, the solution now moves District 3 north of the 460 line that we kept distinct over here. Now it's picking up neighborhoods here, it's picking up neighborhoods here, picks up Victoria Estates, and then there's a line here that's not based on,
White Oak.
yeah, well, I'm sorry, this is Longview, that's Victoria.
Oh, okay.
So they would then be divided. And then there's this line, that's not a road, that's not a waterway, so at the end of the day, we decided, because we're getting to the point, these are not statutorily mandated concerns. So we made the decision that keeping that integrity of 460 as the dividing line was more important than not splitting the community
Yeah.
there. As she said, there's 121 voters there. We talked about, oh man, left, I guess. David's got a precinct right now that's got 5 voters. which is bad, and we want to correct that, but 121 is not tiny, especially when you start looking out through the state. I can point out precincts all over the state that have 50 or less voters.
Yeah.
So if you're at 121, it's not ideal. I wish it could have been corrected. We tried 50 different ways. But to me, changing that boundary wasn't as important. This was not as important as the,
All right.
the 460.
And then I'll go back to Rebecca and let Rebecca, point out her 2 or 3 other issues. And I think the best thing to do is to let the court look at them. Maybe you send what you want to send, because certainly want to respect that, and then let the court chew on it, and then we can come back just out of respect for time today. But the big thing is, letting the court look at it and then be able to ask questions. But
And I agree with that, but I also like Tommy being here, being able to explain.
oh no.
Yeah, it's important.
No, when we come back, my thought was when we'd come back, we could talk about the two.
Sure. They'll be more prepared, the commission will be more prepared instead of just having to shoot from the hip with.
Right, well, let's go, I agree, let's
No.
go through the other one.
No, I wanted to give Rebecca the respect to let her share that.
Follow-up question. So are you all going to redraw the precincts? Like, can any of these issues be fixed with redrawing like on the commission's map? Can you put the people that are in the 5th now, can you put them in a larger precinct? Like, I don't know that answer. Would that fix the 121 issue?
Now that we have the vote center concept, we can have very large precincts. Except for when it comes to the force precincts, they do have to be their own unique precinct. Because of what I said, there's a difference in ballot. So a force precinct is what it says. It has to become a precinct. So even if we didn't want to draw it that way, those are given. So does that make sense? Beyond that, beyond the force precincts, then we can go about work with the county board of elections to decide how to draw the rest of the precincts. And now that we have the vote center concept, those can essentially it's wide open and they can be very large.
But am I correct? Like, some of this is due to the stinking census block.
Yes.
That's like kind of handcuffs you.
Yes.
Is that true?
We're good to work within that.
All right.
Yes, of course. Because this is all about population, but we're also just considering how it affects our elections. Okay. So I'll try to roll on for efficiency. So I would say let me just move forward on that. So we talked about that issue. You saw the correction there. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what Tommy just talked about. He pointed out an area where we follow census law. So of course we want to follow census laws. Those are non-changing, as Tommy said in his presentation. Ideally, however, we need to use census laws because that's about the population. That's essential. But wherever we can, we want them to follow distinct boundaries, roads, creeks, because those are identifiable. It makes the district drivable. It makes it visible. A census block is sort of an intangible thing. You can't see that on the map, as Tom just pointed out. And there is a small area on this county clerk solution map here. But I would point to a much larger area of census block with no distinct boundary or roads. Pull that up here in I think you find the road one with District 1. It's a very large and even larger area. So I would say to what Tommy just said, yes, there may be some of that in both maps. It's more egregious in this map because you see all of this. Now, why did
Bless you.
explain he did that? He did that to keep Mr. Hostetler in his district because we don't want to unseat incumbents. We want to try to avoid that, and that was avoided. This map avoids that as well, obviously. And I would suggest to you that there's a constable issue. I don't know how much we touched on that, but I'm just going to forecast forward. Would we be immediately unseating a constable? No. But will we? Yes, because logically, let's move forward on that. The constable in District 2 recently resigned, so that's an open election, Dave Willis, who serves as District 3 Constable in the reapportionment commission's map,
Go to District 2.
will be residing in District 2. So, if Dave Willis, who's a current incumbent as Constable of District 3, will be forced to run against whoever is then serving as the Constable in District 2. So, while this map doesn't immediately unseat an incumbent, it will happen. We can logically know that will happen. This map avoids that because of where we bring the line. Now, does it follow a very, when you say bumpy, curvy line? It does, because that's the nature of how the roads lay in the county. And so the roads line this way, it's following that. It does that, or creek or road, does it not? And there are some of those, I think you pointed to, did you point to a road?
No, there's not a road. That's a, the
No,
creek is part of your border, but there's nothing there.
Okay, anyways, the road, 75 is a nice straight road, let me put it that way. So if we could you pull these down, we define the top of District 1 and District 2. So 75 is a nice straight line,
Based on
or
25.
25, I'm sorry, 25, not 75. So it's a straighter line than the creek that we're following over here, but it does follow census blocks. So accordingly, and it's a distinct boundary as well. So I don't find necessarily a straight or distinct boundary, US 25, versus a curvy road or a curvy creek, because again, it follows census blocks and it follows a distinct boundary. So what I'm saying is, in doing that, we keep Mr. Hostetler in his district here, we keep the constables in their district. So that would be another issue, and that issue solved. Moving on quickly, can we look at the Rocky Creek issue, please? So you could kind of give us a large view of this area right here. By not taking District 1 further west, and instead pulling it down here, we get this odd shape, I would suggest to you, this is not as pleasingly compact as we like to see it, right here. But the greater issue is this area right here that is already planned for development. And because of how fast Scott County is growing, we can very likely predict within this next 10 years, or less than 10 years now, we can very likely predict that it's already planned for development. So it's already on the way, it's happening. And when this gets developed, we're going to have the same issue, so I won't repeat all of those aspects of what we talked about in the southernmost tip of the county with Georgetown Local Estates. So this is Rocky Creek, and this is Rocky Creek Reserve. Rocky Creek Reserve has an extension right here that will be more fully developed. And we're going to see this happen in the next few years. And then we're going to have the same issue, where members of that same Rocky Creek Reserve community will have this districting issue, where you've got individuals within that same community divided by this line, looking at different representations.
Well, what if they voted a voting center? I mean, you're handing out different ballots all day, right?
Oh, no, we'll give them the correct ballot.
So,
What I'm saying
I
is,
don't know what the confusion is on that.
do I understand, am I prepared to know that when I see a sign on your yard, perhaps, or someone's knocking on my door versus your door, that we have, what kind of who was our representative?
But
That seems very confusing.
well, I didn't mention this earlier. Indian Acres, Indian Hills. I actually just said to him, I didn't even know there was an Indian Hills. I've been here since '87 and thought it was all Indian Acres. Did you know that there's a Bradford Place and what's the front part of the neighborhood called? Yeah, I mean, it's something totally different, totally different. So, but everybody knows that area is Bradford Place, so you're really splitting up. What's Marketplace? You're really splitting up what everybody knows is Indian Acres. So there's no perfect map. I mean, we're not going to get to it.
Sure. I would have to ask members of that community, do you recognize yourself as Indian Acres, Indian Hills, I would suggest to you probably Kenna, who's lived there for many years, she knows which part she
Well,
is.
sure, but that
She
neighborhood has
recognizes
turned over a lot.
But I
There's a
understand.
lot of new people in
Okay,
that neighborhood.
so my further issue with that, would be a common needs. So it's something Mr. Hostetler pointed out. We'll draw in the whole map again. So it's one thing when we have that subdivision like that. But I do think it's confusing when you have a new up-and-coming, rapidly developing subdivision, and you've got different representation, you know, in the other part of that neighborhood that is just so recently developed. Because the example you just used developed over many years. So it's kind of all become homogenous, I should say, over time. It's all turned to become one because it's been there for so long. And as it, you know, it may continue to grow, but this is like a new up-and-coming development. But again, I
Do we
see
draw
a
maps
greater,
on
I
future
see a
use or
greater,
current use?
definitely the
I'm asking
population.
that question.
Oh,
I'm being
we are not
facetious.
drawing maps based on future population, don't get me wrong there, that we're making that projection. I'm talking about as it will affect future elections. So when I'm talking about future population growth, I'm talking about what voters will reasonably be seeing in the time that we're utilizing this. So
I have
that's what I'm referring to.
Question, since we're talking about the District 4, and I know that because of the population, I've got to give up something, and Rick's got to pick up something, and however the numbers all, and I know it's pretty clear on the first one I saw, if I gave up Rocky Creek, that's a big, so on the one on the left, so the population that he makes up there, I guess, is how wide or on his district picks up enough population, because it looks like on the left, that's basically the same thing I've got now, or is it different?
South of Lemons Mill, but there's not many votes, not much population there.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm giving up,
You're-
in your map, where am I giving up a couple thousand, like I know I am in Rocky Creek?
You're giving up above 62. You're giving up above 62. Anderson, Gunnell,
It's down
Sims.
right there. So
I think we're both mentioning.
it's this part right
That's the good part of the county? No.
I can't lose JR.
He requested it.
And he requested it. Oh.
I have a question. So my district,
Is that?
You don't keep him, you don't keep him in either.
You would be
Or
looking
the
at the
yard.
southern, more of the southern part.
Okay.
Instead, so Rocky Creek has a lot of individuals in it. So
Right.
when you get that, you're shading off down.
Which is, okay. And I'm sure you've done your numbers, will they all meet the guidelines to,
If you want numbers, Whitley.
well, I see them, like, I just, with the, whatever the 5%, it has to be within,
This is within, this meets all the same
yeah,
criteria.
okay.
It does.
Right, I know,
So, if I could just continue on that issue, where we were talking about, David, discussing, you were talking about, well, that neighborhood, both having, different representations within that same subdivision. I would say a greater issue for that goes back to this issue with Sadeville. I'm not talking about Sadeville city limits, as Sadeville, I'm talking about Sadeville as we recognize the individuals who say they live in Sadeville, whether they're in the county or not within Sadeville city limits. So I see that as an issue there about representation when you talk about that. So for me, dividing that community is, the same issue we're talking about in Rocky Creek, is voter confusion. I think that issue is the same when we look at Sadeville, not only perhaps voter confusion about where the representation is, but having the representation for their common needs. So again, that would be that was one of my issues as well, recollect that correctly. And I'm sorry about earlier, these are the roads I was talking about earlier, where we're not following the same issue with the creek. Yes, I realize this is a curvy line, that's a creek, the roads here. The individuals who live out here, this is distinct to them, and it is a road, it's a boundary that divides that. Again, one of my other issues was this here, this very large area of census blocks that does not follow a distinct boundary. In order to keep Mr. Hostetler in this district, I would prefer to use the line of these county roads rather than the straighter roads of US 25 or US 75, which was considered at one point. I would prefer to use these county roads and not have to use this very indistinct census block area. And again, it goes to compactness for that. It goes to compactness for the Rocky Creek issue. It meets all of the same requirements.
What does compactness mean?
Compactness means,
I know it contiguous and all that. but
Well,
what does the statute mean?
the guideline in that tries to, I think, discourage in this process for reaching out in a finger to grab a certain population for political reasons. That's what I would pare it down to. I'm not suggesting that's what's happening here, but the more compact you say, then you're reaching, I think you're better reaching that the commonality of needs and representation. And again, it doesn't appear that you're grabbing a population for political reasons. So basically, it's keeping your areas as solid and as basic as possible rather than fingers reaching out to different areas. So
Ideally, a district with compactness is you pick a point in the center and it's a circle around. And of course, that's unachievable. So that's why there are these different measures, these mathematical formulas of compactness. It is the hardest one to define. It's in case law, quoting Justice Potter from the Supreme Court. Compactness is like pornography. I can't define it, I just know it when I see it. And it's almost like the smell test of whether it's compact or not. But the two most accepted measurements are the Rioff and Holsby-Popper. Like I said, those are mathematical formulas. I think it's in the report kind of explains what those formulas are. But all of our districts performed better on the Rioff and Holsby-Popper than they did with the current map.
one more point I'd like to make. We've talked a lot about the 121 voters in the smallest of the force precincts. And as I told you, you'll see 5 force precincts in this map that the commission's putting for you. You'll see 3 here. The smallest of the force precincts. Right here, you'll notice the population. The population, 2,481. The number of registered voters, 2,004. This is the smallest of the force precincts. Of the 3 in this map, whereas there are 5 here, the smallest of registered voters here, 121. I think that's a drastic difference. So, I would probably not even be here addressing these concerns if I would not. I would not be addressing these concerns to you if I worked with the commission and I didn't see a solution for what I'm offering. So I'm not suggesting anything I'm not offering a solution for. Just ask your consideration on these issues and digest both maps at your leisure. I think that wrap up my comments. Got any questions?
Yes, questions, comments?
Can we get the, I guess, other draft map or whatever you want to call it in a PDF form like we've gotten?
Can we get like paper?
Well, yeah, I like,
I said I hate
well,
paper copies, but
yeah,
I'd like to
as
get a
well,
paper copy like that.
yeah,
You
that,
don't need a magnifying glass.
yeah.
So-
We can produce those or small chunks.
But the PDF is helpful too, along with the paper. That's what I did.
So, Tommy, Bernard, Isaac, do you all have any other comments to the process?
Comment a little bit on the concerns Rebecca has. And I will say, probably 95% of the whole map, we agree completely on, so I don't want it to seem like this is antagonistic or whatsoever. No problems, we just have a different philosophy on some of this. First of all, I don't like the word solution because to me, it's changing one set of problems for another set of problems. Like I said, I would love to be able to put that whole neighborhood together, but by doing that, you create the problem up here, I think, of not having 460 as the main dividing, but then a hodgepodge of Elkhorn and coming over here to no man's land, there's no dividing. Now, if we want to look at that, at the census block where Ricky lives, I agree, that was not something I really wanted to do. In the first version, I had it shifted elsewhere, and then I tried to figure out where incumbents live. And that's when I'm like, oh, well, we don't want to do that. And there's a difference here, I think, in magistrates and in constables, in the fact that, one, you all are the ones that are voting on it. I mean, this is, redistricting is an inherently political process. At the end of the day, you all vote. If I'm putting two incumbents together, I've probably got two people that are not going to like that, that are going to vote against it. Constables don't vote on it. However, with the situation it is right now, yes, the District 3 constable would be put into District 2. As Rebecca mentioned, there's a vacancy in District 2. Now, we're not unseating anybody because, one, you're elected to your number, you're not elected to your territory. So for the remainder of the term, those people serve out. And she made the point that, well, we're effectively unseating somebody 4 years from now. That's what elections are for. I mean, I'm looking up here, I know several of you beat incumbents to get on the fiscal court to begin with. So, effectively, we may unseat everybody. I mean, the whole court could flip, next time. That's just how the political process works. But when you consider the districts of magistrates and constables, there's 14 altogether. This preserves 13 of the 14. And let me tell you, when I've worked with the legislature on this, I've had to have the difficult conversation of telling two incumbents, you're going to have to be in the same district. You're going to have to run against it. I had to have that difficult conversation with 6 different people last year. This one, I don't even have to have that conversation with anybody because the one person that's being displaced is being displaced into a district that doesn't even have an incumbent. So it's a little different situation, I think. Now, if we can zoom into the Rocky Creek area, and I mentioned earlier that flag looks weird. That is that census block. Okay, so can we zoom on in?
Right there.
Okay, so if you see this road right here, both sides of that road, we looked at planned development because Whitley, who has access to everything, showed us where the planned houses were on that road. Every house would be in the first. The area that could be future developed is over in here. Now, is it planned? Yes. Is it there now? No. So one, we can't look at the numbers on it because there are no numbers. A recession could hit tomorrow and that neighborhood never even grow. It's planned, but it was planned we were going to have a miner here at one time too. That never happened. Also, this area will connect to Rocky Creek, but it won't be the same subdivision. It will be a new homeowners association or a new subdivision. It'll be like if you think of Canewood and Payne's Landing. They connect together, but they're separate subdivisions. And the people that live in Canewood know they live in Canewood, and the people that live in Payne's Landing know they live in Payne's Landing. And you'll hear the people in Canewood complain about that because they have to pay the golf course fee. The people in Payne's Landing don't. So there's a very distinct, you know where you live. So that area.
It's not a continuation of Rocky Creek Reserve.
No, it will be a new subdivision, a new homeowners association.
Wait,
So
could you weigh in on that?
we talked about that last meeting.
I think it'll be part of the ownership.
Yeah. So that will not, so there will be, yes, it will connect, but there is a division there. But beside the point, it's not there. That it may be a problem, I would say 10 years from now, but we've already postponed this one 2 years. It may be a problem 8 years from now, but we're going to have all kinds of problems all over 8 years from now. I can't solve problems 8 years in the future. So that's why we do this periodically, is because there is growth. Who would have thought 10 years ago that you'd be at 57% over? Stop selling mortgages, probably.
Well, for the sake of time, I think there's been a lot presented. If the information could be shared so the court could review, and then from Cam's data on dates in the window, I mean, we have until 9:15. We have a meeting next Friday, and then, of course, we have that Thursday night meeting. I think when we come back, our discussion wouldn't be as long, most likely when we come back. But I would invite, once we decide when we want to bring this back, I would invite everybody back to the table to make sure anybody that had comment was welcome to make comment. Does this sound like a plan to go forward?
Yes.
All right. Yes, sir.
Judge, if I may, and I just want you all to understand, and everybody, people that may be watching this, to understand. We as a commission, county clerk, we did our due diligence to come up with a fair map. We didn't look at any kind of, competitions or favoritism to this or that. We asked questions like, are we following the law? Are we in variances? We listened to everybody's concern. And we as a body, commission, clerk's office, everybody's talked, and we done the job that you asked us to do. It's for you all to decide, and I don't want any of the citizens in the community to think that we did something other than follow the law. Follow what we were required to do. And I just wanted to say that. We did our due diligence. And I thank you all for letting us do that, but it's you all that you all can decide.
Well, when I cast my vote for you and Tommy and Isaac, I had no misconceptions that anything but that would happen. And my confidence in you all, I went to sleep and didn't worry about it. So I appreciate that and no.
May I join in those comments? Because this is not county clerk against the other members of the commission. This is, I agree with you 100%, Bernard. It's due diligence. This is continued due diligence. The commission did their best work. They presented you with the report in a timely fashion. It's according to law. This is county clerk doing due diligence, giving you all of the information. That's all this is, all of the information for you to digest it and move forward. I don't disagree at all. Both are acceptable according to law. And I don't just say both, because the fiscal court could go yet another way. The fiscal court doesn't have to adopt either of these maps, as we've said. So this is just simply, in my view, it's part of the process, and it's just giving you all the information to move forward.
Yes. Thank you all very much.
One last comment. Like Rebecca said, we went into this knowing that when we put the report forward, that it's in your hands. And if you want to amend it, that is your prerogative, by all means. We're not offended by that whatsoever. All that we would ask, and I think Bernard and Isaac would agree with me on this, if you do amend it, we definitely ask that you abide by the statutory requirements, but we'd also ask that you take into consideration the things like preserving communities of interest, preserving those distinct boundaries as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Isaac.
Toward the end of our map, we did ask, did she have any concerns? And then she came back with these concerns. So it ain't like we did our thing and then she came in and over. So we did ask, do you have anything on your view? And then population, I mean on the flag thing, I did ask, like, do we look at the population growing? And I asked, what was the growth since we would have done it in 20 to now? And that was a number of years, so we did take that into consideration. How fast it was growing.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
No, thank you, Isaac. With that said, I do want to mention one other item. Thank you all again, and we'll make sure everybody knows when we're going to talk about this again, and everybody's invited. I shared a text amendment from Joe Kane. You had that previously. There were some changes chewed on. Joe was going to be here today but couldn't be here. Are there any big questions from that text amendment that you all want me to get answers to from Joe?
Well, I think maybe what I've got, my concerns are, it's gonna be more discussed about from the court than it is for planning and zoning. But I've already addressed my questions with planning and zoning today, so.
Could you share those with me via email or just yell at me and then,
Yeah.
Because I'd like to bring this to the court next Friday for consideration.
The main thing I would say, Judge, is the court really needs to consider about, if we have these zone changes, is whether you want to have sewer access to them or not. And that's going to be a big deal. And from dealing with the trailer parks down on South 25 and spending lots of tax dollars and getting that issue addressed, that is my concern about any future developments not having sewer that is going to be an RV park. And that's the one glaring one.
Yeah.
It's not addressed. It allows them to have different types of sewage.
You tell me if I'm right or wrong. This particular one conversation was, just looking at different systems, and really we'd have to depend on our health department to give us advice. Would you agree with that?
No, I think the county can decide what.
Well, I'm talking about the specifics about this, whatever systems proposed.
Yeah, what is approved, yeah.
There might be one proposed that's completely ridiculous. There might be something else that is a better system. I don't, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, oh, yes, sir, you're correct.
There's different systems, and there's never going to be one. It's always going to be a variable, but the variable is it's not connected to sewer, so we have to make that decision based on information that's what I was saying, coming from the health department and such. So,
yeah, no, I agree.
Are there any proposed RV park campgrounds on the book? Like, could we hear from somebody that might have concern, like, I don't know, kind of like you got to this fence thing before. I don't want to hear just the pro side. Is there anybody that is, I want to hear from
There was an application that has been withdrawn for conditional use permit along the Midway Road area. It's no longer in existence at this point, no application on the books. The two RV parks we have is out on Rogers Gap. There was one proposed behind the old flea market off Connector Road, but I think now that's going through a zone change. Yeah, and Whitley may know, but it's going to go through a zone change to be used for something else. But both of those were hooked to
The
sewer.
most recent one was the Midway effort, right?
That's correct, yes. And there's no applications currently pending. That's why it's important that we get this addressed in case there's a future application.
and the text amendment is a broad framework. The application will have the specifics about whatever system's being recommended, and then at that time, that's when you have to look at the hard data. In my opinion, this is a broad framework. Can we live with that framework as a text amendment?
Unless it's really small, it would come back to the fiscal court as a zone change anyways.
So, if there's no other new business, we've got to get out there to the park, and I hope everybody can make it. I've got my flipper and my apron. Any other comments or questions? Thank you all. We will conclude this meeting.
What apron you wearing today?
My apron.
Just the cook.
It's my